Welcome to this meeting of Babergh District Council Cabinet. I'm Councillor John Ward, Leader of Babergh District Council, and I'll be chairing this meeting. May I remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers or hold separate conversations whilst others are speaking. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. And finally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app, so please, good members, make sure they are logged in and ready to use the app. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you'll be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I'll now move to the agenda. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillor McLaren.
Thank you. Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary, other registrable or non-registrable interests by members. Are there any to declare? Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not actually declaring an interest, but it may be that when we get onto the cost of living report, that there will be discussion around the CA, and then I will have to declare an interest.
Thank you. Item 3, paper BCA 2231, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of October 2022. So just for completeness, I'll go through. This is using page numbering in the agenda pack. Page 5, anyone? Page 6, page 7, page 8, and finally page 9. So if there are no comments regarding the accuracy of the minutes, may I have a proposer and seconder, please? Councillor Malvisi, propose. May I have a seconder? Councillor Osborne. And I'll now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is in progress. Councillor Arthey, how is the... Thank you, Chair. That is 6 votes for and 1 abstention.
Thank you. Right, the next item is item 4, questions by councillors.
None received.
Item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or Joint Audit and Standards Committees.
There are no matters referred.
Thank you. Item 7, forthcoming decisions list. Cabinet members, are there any comments or questions about the forthcoming decisions list? No. Thank you. Item 7, paper BCA 2232, General Fund Financial Monitoring 2022 to 23, Quarter 2. I'd like to invite the Cabinet Member for Finance, Assets and Investments to introduce the report. Councillor Busby, over to you.
Mike. Oh, it's over here. What's it doing over here? I think you can probably hear me anyway. Okay, well, I think we start off by saying what a difference 12 months makes. If you look back at this time last year, we were looking at an underspend. We were optimistic. Inflation was about 2%, something like that. And as a result, we decided to set a tight budget, so there's little or no slack in the budget. Had we realised what we were about to face, I think we would have been a bit more cautious. We know that inflation has soared, and we're now forecasting about £700,000 over budget. This is largely due to the increase in staff costs. We budgeted for about 2%. It looks more like 8%. And other things such as there's been a slight delay in the Endeavour House move in terms of shuffling space around, etc. So those are the two main reasons why the general fund is not looking particularly healthy at the moment. If you want to ask questions on that, on the general fund, I can take those now, or I can go on to capital, and you can ask questions at the end of it. Okay, capital it is then. So, I've written something down here and I can't work out my own writing. We all know that we never spend all that we budget for on capital items, and this year's no exception. We've spent just under £1 million so far, but we're forecasting that that will rise to about 10 million by the end of the year. So if you add in a carry forward of 13.4 million, it's £400,000 less than budgeted. I have one or two questions really that would not be dealt with in this meeting about what should be capital and what shouldn't be. I just wonder whether the brown bins should be treated as capital or not. It doesn't seem much like a capital item to me, but anyway. So there we go. I think capital follows a normal trend. Slow initial spend picks up towards the end of the year, but we have a big carry forward. And one thing we will be rushing to do with capital spend is to borrow to enable us to do it, unless there's a good return on the project. So I'm happy to take questions on the general fund.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. So you're proposing, may I have a seconder, please? Councillor Malvisi? Thank you. Members of the Cabinet, does anyone have any questions for Councillor Busby? Councillor McCraw.
This is more of a general question because obviously we're well into the budget process now, but I just wanted to ask Dave if there's any sort of late change that we might expect, and we have made in the past regular jokes about rabbits being pulled out of hats. I wouldn't expect a massive rabbit, but is there a sort of a small little bunny in there somewhere? Just something that might mitigate the situation a little.
Yeah, unfortunately, Tommy Cooper does not work in the finance team. So there is, certainly for this year, I think it would be expecting something unusual to get a big rabbit that comes out of the hat to save us this year. As for next year, we're still trying to work the numbers, crunch the numbers, but there are such big items that we're still not certain of yet. I mean, the government won't let us know what the settlement's going to be. There's business rates. I mean, there's millions of pounds that are still up for grabs, so we'll have to wait and see for those.
Any other questions? Councillor Arthey.
Yeah, just one about the corporate resources figure, and in the appendix, the last reason given is budgeted variance in management factor. Sorry, vacancy. Did I say variance? Vacancy. Vacancy management factor of £500,000 is included within corporate resources. This offsets forecast vacancy underspends in all services. Can somebody just explain that to me?
Yeah. Each year, as you know, we budget to be underspent on staff in terms of we don't fill vacancies as quickly as perhaps we could have done, or we hold the vacancy. What we've done is we hold that budget for the whole council under corporate resources. Okay, so there's all the savings on delayed staff vacancies comes under corporate resources. The actuals go under the teams. So there's, unfortunately, you look at the budget in one team, i.e. corporate resources, but you see the actual in the various teams, which you can see it lists there some of the extra costs that have occurred in the teams. And some of the savings that have occurred in the teams as well. Sorry, did you understand that?
No, not really. I'm still not quite clear why we've got an extra £500,000 in there. The only reason surely for that could be that we had budgeted to not have people in employment, and we've ended up having them in employment. Is that right? No.
It's the opposite way around. Am I right, girls? Yes. We've got a vacancy, so we've budgeted to fill the vacancy, but we delay doing so, and we've estimated it's 3 months approximately is the usual delay, and therefore we underspend on our staff costs because we don't fill the vacancy as quick as we could.
I still don't quite get it, but I'm sure.
Rebecca, could you provide further clarification, please, for Councillor Arthur? Thank you.
Yes, certainly. So, Councillor Busby's correct. So the budget for the transitional vacancies sits within corporate resources. In effect, that's a negative budget. It shows us 500,000 income. But during the year, when the vacancies happen, the underspends go against the different services. So the underspends are in there in the variance, but they're in the other services. So there's nothing against the 500,000 negative budget within corporate resources, which makes it look like an overspend.
So it makes it look like an overspend, but it's not.
But it's not, yeah.
Thank you.
And I think we'll try and smooth that out for next year's budget so that it doesn't need this kind of an explanation.
Are there any other questions? If not, we can move into debate if anyone wants to comment in debate. I'd just like to open up by saying that the position we've got here at quarter two is actually a £90,000 improvement on the quarter one forecast. So it is a better picture. Whether we can expect that to change through quarter three and through to the outturn or not, I don't know. But the important thing is that with our budget surplus last year, and we put £500,000 into the inflationary pressures reserve, we were able to draw on that to help us through this situation we've got here, which was a sensible piece of foresight, really, in terms of being able to smooth out things like that. And also, of course, we've got our strategic priorities reserve, and we can dip into that. So while the use of reserves is not something you want to regularly rely on, it is nonetheless we have got healthy reserves, and we've been able to use them to deal with this forecast overspend. Does anyone else wish to say anything?
Well, just to say that you can't keep dipping into your reserves because they're a finite number unless you can keep topping them up. Once they've gone, they've gone.
I know. Any further comments from anyone? In which case then, we will move to the vote. Paper's been proposed and seconded, so we will now go to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is in progress. That is 7 votes for, and that's unanimous, Chair.
Right, moving on then. Item 9, paper BCA 2233, the HRA financial monitoring for 22 to 23, quarter 2. Again, I'd like to invite the Cabinet Member for Finance, Assets and Investments to introduce the report. Councillor Busby.
Okay, so you could almost repeat what I said in the first question, really. It's the housing revenue account has been hit by similar issues, really. We were budgeting for a £500,000 surplus. It now looks as though it's going to be £300,000 overspend, so we're £800,000 worse off. Roughly, it's 825 there. That's despite the fact that rents have increased by 1%, giving us an extra £250,000. It's on the cost side where the problems occur, on housing management, at building services and the repairs and maintenance. Where we've seen our own costs increase, we've had to also employ contractors and consultants, all of which have made our budgets blown out of the water, quite frankly. And that does not look as though it's going to change for next year. We've got a lot of work to do on the housing front, and I suspect that we might be over next year on that as well. On the capital side of the budget, we spent 6 million. We've got a further 8 that we anticipate spending, which will leave 9 million to carry forward. So again, although we budget quite high numbers, it's very rare that we would expect to spend all of it. I think we know the projects that are progressing. Certainly the headquarters at Hadleigh is progressing nicely. The issues, we have some issues in Sudbury, which will take some time to sort out. Whether that budget that's been earmarked for Sudbury gets spent next year or not, I don't know. We'll have to see. But it'll be carried forward anyway. So, happy to propose the recommendations if I can have a second.
Councillor Osborne, second. Thank you for that, Councillor Busby. Are there any questions, anyone? Councillor Arthey.
Yeah, similar to before, really, just picking out £500,000 here, and that's on repairs and maintenance, and is detailed as being overspend on the use of subcontractors to support the trades team on a backlog of void and responsive jobs built up as a result of COVID. I seem to remember that last year we had a very similar thing, and during COVID we had a lower than anticipated spend because people haven't been able to go out and sort the jobs out. It's been about 12 months now since the sort of the relaxation, if you like, of COVID restrictions. And so are we still catching up? Have we caught up? Or is this going to continue? And I mean, there's obviously the issue that Councillor Osborne might answer, which is the continued use of contractors because our own teams can't complete the work.
I think in order to add to that, the position we've got at Q2 is £300,000 worse than it was at Q1. So is it stabilising as well for the rest of the year? Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what we've done in the past is, I think this is more a case of that we've been underestimating the budget for our repairs and maintenance. And with all the transformation work that's currently taking place, it will become a more realistic budget. If you compare us to other authorities, although we're not on the lowest charging, we do tend to underestimate on the cost each per house within the two districts. I think the transformation work that's being done will look at all this and it will become more of a reality of where we actually are. But I think to answer your concern, Clive, it's a case of, I'm sure it's a case that we've been underestimating in the budget. In regards to the contractors, I'll go to Deborah if I may, because it's going to be necessary to use contractors and continue to use contractors if we want to get to the situation where we need to be to assure that our tenants are getting the right level of service. But if I could come to our corporate manager for, our director for housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we will be continuing to use contractors for some time yet because we do have a backlog of repairs and we need to get to a steady state. We're doing a number of things to improve the situation. As members will be aware, we're going through a diagnostic exercise which will then form our transformation plan, which is likely to take 18 months to 2 years to fully implement. We've also put in the budget for next year a sum of money to carry out a comprehensive stock condition survey. So we have been carrying out stock condition surveys, but we want to enhance that further. And what that will allow us to do is feed the data into our 30-year business plan, which will then help us plan our component replacement programme over the next 30 years. That will reduce our spend on repairs and maintenance, because it will mean we're taking a planned approach rather than a reactive approach.
Thank you, Deborah. Councillor Arthey.
Well, it's just in response to all of that, really. So I'm still not absolutely clear. I think the point of the question was, is this because we're still playing catch-up, or is this a reflection of the fact that costs have increased and moving forward we're going to be looking at these increased figures?
Yes and yes. Yes, it isn't because of we are catching up. I mean, two things really. One is, as I said, because of COVID, but also resourcing. We've had a problem getting the kind of resources. There's, as you're aware, in the construction sector, some materials are in short supply. Therefore, you can't operate as in an efficient way as you would like necessarily. So I think we're going to see this level of costs for the next 2 or 3 years until we can catch up, unfortunately. But who knows? We could be entering a reduction in house demand or house supply next year. The builders might cut back because of the housing market, and we might find that we've got plenty of resource that we can tap into. But I think it's going to be a tough couple of years. We can't keep doing that because there's only a finite amount of budget.
Councillor Osborne, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think, Councillor Arthey, it's a combination of the two, really. And I have to be perfectly upfront. It's going to get worse before it gets better, but there is going to be light at the end of the tunnel. And as I've just alluded to on the transformation work, we will at least know where we're going and how we're going to get there, and the cost of getting there, which is very critical to the whole thing.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, we'll move into debate. Does anyone wish to say anything about the HRA Q2 position that hasn't already been covered in the questions? Councillor Osborne.
Thank you. If no members are other coming in on the debate, I would like to say that obviously there are, as David has already alluded to, there are so many challenges coming forward for our housing team, and they work under really hard, emotive, challenging circumstances. So I think it's important that members support all the work that they do in moving things forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. If no one else has anything they wish to say, then I'll move to the vote on this item. May we conduct the electronic vote, please? Thank you.
That vote is now in progress, members. That is 7 votes for. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Item 9, paper BCA 2234, Q2 performance report for 2022 to 23. I'd like to invite the Cabinet Member for Customers, Digital Transformation and Improvement to introduce the report. Councillor McCraw.
Thank you very much, Chair. You'll have to excuse me, I have a number of papers to look at. This is the Q2 performance and the paper just described. It provides a selection of performance highlights for each of the Council's strategic priorities, all 6 of them. And it's intended to give Babergh members an opportunity to consider our achievements for Q2 22-23 at this meeting. I would stress, of course, that this is Q2. We're now at the end of Q3, approaching Q4, so this is historical information. Rather than myself go through each item, I'm going to ask if each Cabinet member could pick out an item from their portfolio, starting off with the economy portfolio and then moving through the others. I wonder if that would be okay, Councillor Ward.
That would be perfect. Yes, we can do that. So I will start then with
Thank
the
you very
economy
much,
portfolio.
Councillor Ward.
Well, for me, there are two things. Firstly, it's good to see that the Innovate Local scheme at the Sudbury and Hadleigh markets is continuing, and that we've got 9 new businesses supported in this period. It's something which I think is a great success. We probably didn't realise how successful it was going to be, so I'm very pleased at that. The other thing I just wanted to point out, although at this point, at Q2, so 60 businesses nominated across 9 categories for the Innovation Awards, those Innovation Awards have now taken place, and they were a resounding success. It was an excellent event. So two high points in the economy portfolio. Thank you.
Councillor Malvisi, for the environment, do you have a highlight you'd like to point out?
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Well, our garden waste subscribers continue to increase. This quarter we saw 51 join the scheme, rising to the total number of 17,000, which is good. The fly tipping incidents, 98% of them are cleared in 48 hours, and the total number is 90 individuals decided to dump their waste on public land. These figures do not reflect what gets dumped on private land, because we're not responsible for that, for clearing that. Food businesses in Babergh, 88% of them have got a good hygiene rating of 5. But where my old headmaster would be saying to me, we need to try harder, is the recycling collected figures. We're still dealing with a 12-month rolling average of about 15.8%. That means that 15.8% of what we have collected in order to recycle was contaminated and therefore had to go to incineration. So we do need to try harder to increase or decrease that figure and increase the amount that recycle it that's available. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Malvisi. For the customers' portfolio, I think the point I'd highlight from the overall report is the level of calls that we've received in that quarter. We've received an average of 556 calls per day, and a total of 506 visits to the customer access points, the CAPs, within Hadleigh, Shotley and Sudbury. There was a 12% reduction in calls per day from Q1, so Q1 was even busier, but total visits to the CAPs decreased by 26% due to the end of the council tax rebate initiative. The point I'm making here is that the level, the workload, which is provided by all the portfolios in the council, because customers on the phone calls will be talking about every single thing that's on their mind, and obviously there's a lot on everybody's mind. Q2 was not as busy as Q1, but it was, if anything, still a very high level of calls. If we move on, I have communities next, but I don't think we have our communities portfolio holder here, so I shall do that one myself. And I thought the point that I noted, and I know that this is a matter that's concerned many members of the public, is ASB. In the quarter, a total of 11 new antisocial behaviour cases were discussed at the ASB Partnership Panel, and a further 29 lower-risk ASB cases were dealt with by officers. ASB is not a subject that's being ignored. If we move on then to well-being, now who is the best person to speak on the subject of well-being as a portfolio holder?
That would have been Councillor McLaren as well. But
Councillor McLaren as well. In that case, I thought it was important to point out that there were 36,722 households were supported with the council tax energy rebate under the mandatory and the discretionary schemes, and almost £5 million was spent and distributed. And I think we all understand how important that money was for our communities and our residents. Councillor Osborne, I now bring us to housing, if you have any points you'd like to bring up from there.
Thank you very much. As well as the development of an excellent tenants engagement policy, which I know was Q3, but I can't help mentioning it because it is an excellent policy. We also approved an empty homes policy in Q2. And we all know that if we can bring empty homes back into use, it helps reduce the number of homeless people and also helps to reduce the number of people on the housing register. If I could just quote some figures, the number of empty homes inspected in Babergh was 6. This is the Q2. Number of owners engaged with 122. Number of grants offered, just 1. And number of grants awarded is 0, so we need to look at that. And long-term empties brought back into use is 26, and empty homes letters sent asking people to come forward was 110. So I'm sure members will agree with me, they are excellent figures and is showing that the empty homes policy is actually working. And when I attended the last Suffolk Housing Board, I know that some of the other Suffolk authorities are going to use that as an exemplar as well for them to adopt. So excellent work to all concerned.
Thank you very much, Jan. The final item is on the health of the organisation, which I don't think falls upon any particular portfolio holder, and I'm not going to ask the Chief Executive to comment on it, but I did note that our average number of days of sickness may have increased marginally from the previous quarter, from 1.8 to 1.8 from 1.64, but the total number of days lost to sickness has actually decreased. And the top 2 reasons for absence are still COVID-19 and mental health. And I think it's important that we keep an eye on that. The final one, though, I think is important, is that our reach for Facebook is 84,245. That's the number of unique users who had any content from our Facebook page or about the page on their screens. And I just point out that that's not very far short of our population, which I think is interesting. It's not far short, is my point. Proportionately, it's about on that level. What I was going to suggest is if anybody has any questions on the content of the performance for Q2, that they ask them now to the relevant Cabinet member, and we'll see where we go from there.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. So, are there any questions? Councillor Arthey.
Yes. So, a little bit like the previous paper, which was an outturned report, there's nothing we can do to change what's already happened. But the thing that I always mention, and have done for quite some time, so I think you know where I'm going, is in the customers section, and it's on page 44, and it's about the waiting time for people calling us and the abandon rate. So there are reasons given in here, and we've been given reasons before as to why this could be the case. Does it now mean that the people that we were short of have now been trained up and we will see an improvement in these figures either next quarter or by the end of the year?
Councillor McCraw.
Yes.
Can you pick that one up? Thank you.
I mean, effectively, yes, and what's more, I can say yes with some confidence. We know that we've had this average handling time of calls rising. We know why that is, the workload I've referred to in the report itself, and the last 2 quarters has been exceptionally high. We have had a lot of staff seconded, we've trained new staff. I've mentioned before in briefings that it takes roughly 12 weeks to train a new member of the call centre staff in just one particular part of it, and obviously as they gain more experience and they gain more confidence during the training process, this takes away the more experienced call handlers. But I return to this point that everything that the call centre deals with is stuff that people have concerns about from across the entire council's operation. And when we have stresses across in society and in the council area, in particular portfolios, we know where those stresses lie, and I don't want to go into the detail of those, but I'd ask members to consider that the workload that comes through the call centre is that generated by all our portfolios. It is not the creation, it is the result, and we have to handle it. Now, how's it improving? Well, the most recent figures, which date, I think, into the middle of last month, that's November, show a distinct fall. The staff are becoming more confident, and I think we can expect figures of below 4 minutes and getting down to 3 minutes. I wouldn't like to pin it down exactly. I would point out that there are days in every month, in every quarter, where we achieve the incredibly ambitious target of 1 minute 45 seconds. There are several days in every month. It's just that there are days where a single call can take a great deal longer. I wish I could give you a stronger answer than that. The point is the trend is going in the right direction. I hope that answers your question, Councillor Arthey.
Thank you.
Are there any? Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see for the environment that the incidence of fly tipping is going back to pre-pandemic levels, and you know how I always get very concerned about domestic fly tipping in particular. Now, I know during Q2 we had a day event in a specific area in Cornard where we were going to introduce some pilot schemes on helping to reduce the level of fly tipping on our developments. I was just wondering how they're panning out, and are we planning to move them into other areas within Babergh?
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Mavisi, or
I think we have to ask the Director of
operations, yeah.
update us if it's possible, because I don't have that.
Okay. Mark, are you able to provide an update?
I'm afraid I don't have that information, but I will go away and get it.
Thank you. We'll have to report back on that, Councillor Osborne. Any other questions? Nope. Okay then. Well, this paper is for noting only, so there is no vote. But as usual, it's got some great information in it, and it's very easy to understand. Councillor Boswell, you got a quick question then?
Item for debate, I suppose. Well, it's not. It's just a point. We're talking about the response on the phones and stuff. I mean, I had a text message sent to me which was blank, blank, blank council, been trying to talk to them for 2 weeks, emailed nearly every day, they won't respond. Neither architect or us can get hold of them. They're a nightmare. That isn't good.
No, it isn't. I quite agree. I mean, effectively, if any of these situations arises and if any member becomes aware of such a poor response, could they let myself, Sam, particularly Sam, and Sarah know about them? We'll investigate, and we have done in the past. And in fact, we've been managed to resolve what the situation has been. In some cases, it's just been a breakdown in communications because what somebody thinks they're sending maybe has not been going to the right place. But if we don't know about it, we can't deal with it. I just found some further information that might actually help on the subject of how the new staff are developing. I'm afraid I missed the bottom part of my notes. I apologise to my team there. The staff most recent figure for November for call waiting was 3 minutes 10. The abandonment rate has been reduced further and is down to from an earlier figure of 23% to 16%, and we expect that to be decreasing as the team become fully trained. We're also recruiting 3 apprentice positions as we're trialling different initiatives, and the idea is to develop a skill set that can be used for more things than just customer services. I think you should see a definite improvement. But as I say, anything like that comes up, Councillor Busby, please let me or the team know, and we will investigate. I mean, right down to the detail. I phoned people myself, and I would expect the team would follow up as well.
Thank you for that, Councillor Craw. And the point is that these things do happen from time to time. It's unfortunate, but that's what councillors are there for. Members of the public need to get in touch with their local councillor who can pick up and resolve these issues on their behalf. Okay then, if everyone's happy, we'll move on. Thank you for that, Councillor McCraw. Item 10, paper BCA 2235, the cost of living crisis 5-point action plan progress report, Phase 1 and the Phase 2 action plan. In the absence of Councillor McLaren, Councillor Osborne has kindly volunteered to introduce this report. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I have to say an arm behind the back rather than volunteering, but there you go. At the initial launch of the Cost of Living Crisis Report, it was seen as ambitious and lacking detail, and Cabinet members were unsure whether the plan was robust enough to meet the needs of our residents and requested to be kept informed of the plan's progress. In front of you today is a comprehensive report that gives context and background as to the change in landscape of the cost of living crisis, a summary of the work undertaken over the last 6 months against the 5-point action plan, Phase 1, which was agreed by Babergh Cabinet in June 2022. The Phase 2 action plan for the next 6 months, through the winter into spring, recognising the need for winter preparedness and the required flexibility to enable the Council to respond to emerging needs in this fast-moving environment, as agreed in the Recommendation 3.2 from the 8th of June 22 Cabinet. However, behind this report has been a lot of good teamwork and commitment, and the dynamic has changed, which I think needs to be noted publicly today. The needs and cries we envisage has become the reality, and for the foreseeable future there are going to be constantly moving goalposts. The project has expanded beyond the remit of the Communities Directorate, and an internal stakeholder group is in place, overseeing and monitoring the direction of the project. Our target population now includes staff as well as residents. Many of the defined objectives cannot be met by any one organisation, so our relationship with the voluntary, health and other public sector organisations is essential to implementation. Our external partners in leisure are providing some excellent work in relation to warm spaces, social prescribing, dementia support, health and wellbeing activities for many different age groups. We welcome the appointment of the Cost of Living Coordinator, Liza Dale, who reports to Sam Lake. Liza is working very hard with all our partners to ensure good outcomes and to achieve our main objectives, and that is not an easy task. In conclusion, I wish to thank Di Robinson and Vicky Morsley, the internal stakeholder group and the community's locality teams for all their hard work to achieve so much in a short space of time, and all those who contributed and wrote the report in front of you today. Members, I would like to draw your attention to item 3, the recommendations, which is to review and note the content of Phase 1 Cost of Living 5-point Action Plan Dashboard Report in Appendix 1, and 3.2, to note the focus of the Phase 2 Cost of Living Action Plan at Appendix 2. Both papers are for noting and no decision is required, and Officers Sam Lake and Vicky Morsley are here to take questions. Thank you very much, members and Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. May I have a seconder, please? Councillor Malvisi. Members of the Cabinet, does anyone have any questions? Councillor Osborne.
Thank you very much. To officers, I apologise if I've missed this. I have looked at the action plan and I've looked at the report, so if I've missed it, I do apologise. But you refer to strong working with partners to achieve the outcomes outlined in the action plan. Have you been working with town and parish councils? Because I know, for example, in Sudbury, there's a lot of work going on. They've set up, I think the town council have set up similar to a food bank there, for example, which is working really well. And I'm just concerned that we'll have duplication where town and parishes are working in isolation, we're working in isolation, and it's much better to work together to get results. So are we working and talking to our town and parish councils?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Yes, we are. So every time we have any updates or any information that we can share, or news or information around potential funding streams to create and develop things like warm spaces, then we've been liaising directly with our town and parish councils. And also last month and the month before, I attended a Suffolk forum meeting as well, where I just explained the roles of the communities team, but also the work that we've done on cost of living. So we've also shared it that way, and that presentation also was then circulated to all town and parish councils. Where we have information also that we've created in terms of flyers, whether that's that we've created or that have been created by the County Council, which basically links up all of our web pages and the various government support, but also local support around LWAT, for example. We've also been sharing that with our town and parish councils. And as it was just in terms of your introductions, the locality officers have also been working closely with parish councils as well. So keeping their ears to the ground where there's a need or where a particular group may require additional funding to enhance or extend their community programmes to become warm spaces. Then we've also been making sure they're linked in with our various grants teams as well. So we are working closely, like I say, with town and parish councils. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Malvisi.
Good afternoon. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because as chairman of Long Melford Parish Council the other evening, I had a councillor, well, several councillors querying a communication that we'd received from, and I can't remember specifically, but it was a community interest company providing warm spaces, and it came from Babergh, and we had no prior knowledge. Didn't know what they were talking about, didn't know where they were going, and I was left looking pretty stupid. So, if at all possible, after this meeting, could we have 2 words? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malvisi. Any other questions? Councillor Arthey.
It's not really a question, I don't think, but it's kind of a question. And that's to support what Councillor Osborne asked as a question, really, about working in partnership. I think Councillor Osborne was specifically talking about town and parish councils, but in the report, and I've just gone off the page, but I think it's the top item for our refresh, is working in partnership, because in all honesty, on our own, there isn't a great deal that we can achieve. The point is that we've got a role to play working with others to jointly do something to help. So that's not really a question, I'm sorry.
No, that was straying into debate, but it doesn't matter. I'll be flexible. Councillor McCraw.
Actually, on a similar point, and just as an observation, in my own community, I know of 2 organisations that are organising warm spaces, and a third one that has been doing a coffee caravan every Wednesday for 2 hours every Wednesday with free coffee and biscuits. And it's actually a huge success. It's getting, this is before the matter of warm spaces came up. But it's ongoing, and it's attracting over 30 people every week. But 2 other, one is a community interest company, 2 other organisations have set up their own schemes, and they may not have actually had any contact with us on this. They're just going ahead and doing it independently. I've offered funding myself through my locality's budget, and that would be true of a local Methodist church, which is doing exactly the same thing. So it's not always going to be tied together. A lot of community organisations go their own way, and they don't get in touch with us. And it's trying to keep track of it. There's a lot of goodwill out there. A lot of people are coming to the same conclusion. So I can see where the difficulty might have arisen, but I don't know if it's necessarily something that they would inform us of. Just a thought.
Thank you, Councillor McCraw. Councillor Malvisi.
Yes, I totally agree with Councillor McGraw. But at the end of the day, if the person directing the communication traffic is Babergh, then surely they should come to their district councillors first that are responsible for that ward and say, these people are going to be working. We'll engage with them. We'll meet with them. But when something lands on the doormat, you're left...
Without name?
Yes. Yeah. And you're, as a district councillor, you're left with no information. You can't respond, you can't update, you can't inform. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Are we in debate, Mr. Chairman? Sort of, okay. Because mine's not a question. It's obviously, I absolutely agree, you know, working in partnership with all the other partners is key to the success of the action plan, and without them, we just will not achieve it. I think Babergh are leading in the field in this one, and it's great that we've taken the incentive and that we're moving forward on this. I do hope that the health providers and also Suffolk County Council are coming forward as well and helping both financially and with resources as well. Because it's not just down to Babergh. It's very commendable that we're taking the lead on this, but we also need them to work with us if it's going to be deliverable. So I do hope that they are coming forward. My experience in the past is that the health providers, for example, are a little bit slow in coming, especially where it's all about prevention. They're more about cure at the moment than prevention. So hopefully they start to think around that. But also Suffolk County Council as well. So do we have any indication as to the support we're getting from them at the moment? Sorry, I've now gone back into a question, but it's just triggered something in my mind. Thank you.
Certainly, I agree. And in terms of the County Council, they have provided support. Do you know? Is that any better? Yeah, I can hear myself better as well. Yeah, so with regard to sort of funding some of the schemes, we do work closely with Suffolk County Council as part of the Collaborative Communities Board, where there's funding that does come down to the districts as a result of the work that we do there. And certainly a lot of the support we provide in terms of warm spaces so far has been with funding that's come from the County Council. We've also, in terms of, when I say we, Babergh has also contributed to that fund as well. So it's a kind of a co-production of that warm spaces grant funding process. In terms of our health partners, they tend to be more specific around certain types of projects. So they will support things which are not directly around warm spaces necessarily, but will be on programs that support the well-being of our communities, and we work in partnership with them with regards to those types of activities. So you're absolutely right. We do work very closely with those partners to ensure that we provide a sort of well-rounded, holistic program of support, not just signposting to other types of financial support, which is what we do with regards to those government schemes.
Thank you, Vicky. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd like to finish with a quick question. It's probably best directed to Councillor Osborne. The discretionary housing payments, which we administer through the Shared Revenues Partnership, do we have any feel as to what the numbers were the previous year? We've got numbers so far here for both Babergh and Mid Suffolk for this situation now, but as part of this cost of living report, but do we know how that compares with previous years? And also, is there a cap on the funds that we distribute?
I've got the figures. I attended the Shared Revenue Partnership meeting on the 23rd of November, so this is the latest report that I've got. And in regards to the discretionary housing payments, I haven't got a comparison for last year. I didn't bring that report with me, so I apologise. But the grant itself was £86,572. We've paid out £33,580. Committed is £8,522. So remaining is £44,469. So the percentage we've awarded is 48.63. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to ensure that we deliver, basically award 100%. Because there's a demand, there's got to be a demand out there for it. And I'm sure with the next report that we get from the Shared Revenue Partnership, that will have increased, that percentage awarded will have increased considerably. I don't know if that answers your question. With regards to a cap, what we don't spend, unfortunately, has to go back. So it's imperative that with everything that's going on and the cost of living and the heating crisis and everything else, we need to spend 100% of that grant. And there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to make sure that that happens.
Thank you, Councillor Osborne. That answers it perfectly. Thank you. Okay, everyone. If there are no further questions or comments, as Councillor Osborne said, this is just to review and note the paper, so there is no vote. There is a vote. Not on this one. Oh, well, I've just been informed there is a vote, but
this is for the...
this is the cost of living paper.
We have a vote for that.
It's not in my notes.
Noted.
Okay, so there's a vote on this paper. We'll vote.
I apologise for the confusion, but the vote's now in progress.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, it's got on the recommendation to review and note the contents of Phase 1 Cost of Living Action Plan. Is the recommendation correct or is it incorrect?
I'll just go back and have a look at that. Yeah, it definitely says in the paper, both papers are for noting, no decision required.
Vote to note, okay. The new phase, vote to note.
Members, you are voting on this item, please. The vote is in progress. Thank you very much. That is 7 votes for, that's unanimous.
Thank you. The next is item 11, paper BCA 2236, the Hadleigh A1071 Roadside Commercial Workspace Development. And this will be a paper we vote on, definitely. Item 12. Item 12.
Excuse me, Chair. I have noticed that you have given the item various numbers as you have gone through the script.
That is
because the script is wrong.
The script is wrong, yeah, yes.
I do apologise. The order of proceedings are wrong, but we will make sure you get the right script next time.
There was a gap actually in the item numbering between the minutes and the questions by councillors. It went from 3 to 5. Anyway, the next item, the final item, is paper BCA 2236, the Hadleigh A1071 Roadside Commercial Workspace Development. I'll introduce this report. Members will remember that we have already discussed and voted on the progress of this project, but this paper is to report back because there are effectively three changes that will need confirmation and approval. Firstly, we have an updated viability appraisal on the options and the borrowing costs. We've also got a new potential buyer for the convenience store and retail unit, and therefore we've got the draft heads of terms for an updated freehold disposal of that. And finally, we have again the draft heads of terms for the anchor tenant site, the office site. Now the details of all of these are in the appendices A, B and C, which are confidential. So if anyone wishes to discuss the detail of that, we will have to have a vote to go into confidential session. However, the important thing is we're going to have to make decisions around this. Obviously, we've got to note the progress of the scheme layout, which again the final scheme layout is in Appendix D. We've also got to authorise the Director for Economic Growth and Climate Change to conclude the optimal scheme layout based on the occupier and local intelligence gathered for this, and then proceed to submit a planning application, which will be early next year. We've also got to approve the draft heads of terms lease agreement for the office unit, and that's in your confidential Appendix B. And we've got to delegate to the Director for Economic Growth and Climate Change the authority to agree or vary any final terms for that lease agreement. And finally, we have to approve the substituted bid, the new bid for the freehold transfer of the A1 convenience retail and drive-through space, and the details of that are in Appendix C. And also to delegate, again to the Director for Economic Growth and Climate Change, the authority to agree or vary those final terms. And also, should it be necessary, to accept a substitute bid should this one that we have not proceed, provided that substitute bid is on the same or similar terms. And of course, we've got to proceed with marketing the remaining light industrial units, which we will be retaining the ownership of. So that's the paper which I'm proposing, and I'd like to have a seconder, please, for this. Councillor McCraw.
Chair, can I ask, before we go any further, is it going to be possible to discuss this in any meaningful way without going into a confidential session? I mean, it seems to me that all of those decisions do refer very obviously to the appendices.
They do.
And I don't think we can, so I'd like to propose that we go into a confidential session so we may give this its proper consideration.
Thank you. Would anyone like to second that? Councillor Marvisi? Excellent. Okay. Right. We will then take a vote to... Oh, I've got to read all of that, haven't I? Yeah, sorry. Exclusion of the public. To consider whether, pursuant to Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public should be excluded from the meeting for the business specified below on the grounds that if the public were present during this item, it is likely that there would be the disclosure to them of exempt information as indicated against the item. The author of the report proposed to be considered in Part 2 of the agenda is satisfied that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. So we've had that proposed and seconded. And may we now have the vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress on the app. Thank you, Chair. That's 7 votes for. That's unanimous. We are now going into closed session.
Right, okay, thank you. We're back into open session now. Before we go to the vote, is there anything anyone else wishes to say in open session about this? All I would like to do is to sum up and say that, as before, this is an excellent opportunity we've been presented with for Hadleigh, a mixed-use commercial site right on the edge of town, on the bypass. And I'm really pleased we're in a position now to take the whole site forward with 3 very different and complementary components to it. So I'm just looking forward to when it can all get built out and occupied, particularly the small industrial units, because I think they're going to be incredibly useful for micro and start-up businesses in the Hadleigh area, because it is a growing town, the population is rising, and it provides an opportunity for local employment for new businesses. Councillor Busby, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to ask Lee whether, it's probably early days obviously, but whether there's been any interest shown in those units yet.
Yes, the marketing agent has had some inquiries, and the paper does ask for permission to carry on that, and just as well to mention that the figures and the development appraisal does include all costs, agent fees, etc. within that, and we still do have some surplus left from the original cabinet amount that was allocated for marketing agent. But yes, we are getting interest, and that will continue if approved.
Thank you, Lee. Right, well, I've summarised the recommendations in my introduction, so I won't read them out again. They've been proposed and seconded. We'll now move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. The vote is now in progress. That is 7 votes for. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Right, that brings today's meeting to a close, and the next meeting is scheduled for Monday the 9th of January 2023 at 2 p.m. Thank you, everybody.